For the 200th time, welcome to ClapperCast. I'm your host as always, Carson Timar, and today I'm joined by Paul Price as we review the year in film, which was 2024. This is our annual tradition. It is one of my favorite episodes every single year, and today we get the bonus joy of having this be ClapperCast episode 200. So between the categories, as we talk about our best and worst films, directors, screenplays, performers, and scenes of 2024, we'll be hearing from some who have joined us on ClapperCast over the years as we celebrate our 200th episode. A massive thank you to everyone who has been on the podcast and everyone who's listened to the podcast. And just know, if you are listening to this episode, the time codes might be your friend. We're definitely going to put time codes down in the description because some tend to ramble for a few minutes. Maybe your host even has like an extended message they share during part of this. And if you just want to get to our best and worst of 2024, just like beyond valid, check the time codes in the description. Without further ado, let's get to episode 200 of ClapperCast, our best and worst of 2024. And Paul, happy 200 episodes. I'm so happy that you're joining me for such a monumental occasion, considering you were there for episode 100. And I think outside of me, you've been on the most episodes out of anybody. So I think it's only fitting you are here today. And first, it's been a while since you've been on the podcast. Just to check in, how have you been, buddy? It's been a while. Are you doing well?
I am doing well. I mean, you come up all the time, so you know me. But yeah, life's been good. I got really into music this year, actually. Outside of our girl Taylor, who I'll just like throw it out there, is my most watched actress, unfortunately. It was really like, oh, I think it's going to end up being J.K. Simmons or possibly Willem Dafoe. And no, it's still Taylor. So she was also my most listened to music. I read 3 books about her. So really, she's probably my most read. It's just like all of my metrics are really screwed right now. But yeah, life's been good. Most of my friends have stopped going to movies, as have I now. There's just, and I think it's just, we'll get into it, but like this year just wasn't a killer. So there was a lot of like, let's skips, which that wasn't actually one of the questions that you had, but ones that I like, if you had asked me at the beginning of the year, are you going to see this? I'd be like, oh, of course. Furiosa, Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Joker 2. I'm not trying to say the title. And I think that's it. I think I got through the rest, but I got through them because, I had screeners and stuff. Outside of that, I did not see them in theaters. Like Beetlejuice, things that I like fully expected to go see opening weekend. I was just like, okay. And they had fine ratings. There's no like, they were fine. I did not mention it in this list because I didn't go that far up in my, fucking Letterboxd. But, the only movie that I experienced like pure unbridled joy this year, I think, was Argyle, and it's terrible. But I like think back on like, I was thinking, when we were doing the list, my list for best scenes, by the way, horrendous, but like absolute garbage. But like Argyle's the only time I was like, I'm having fun in a movie this year. I think there are a lot of great movies, but there's nothing that just was like super fun. Even one of the fun movies that I will reference multiple times, I don't think like hit the highs of like previous years.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I think it was definitely kind of a boring year for cinema. We'll get to our overall thoughts later, but like I definitely saw the least amount of new releases I've seen like ever. Not a lot of, I appreciate that you really deep dived into your screener list. There's a bunch of stuff I just could not bring myself to watch. I do find it funny that I know like you did go see Venom 3 opening night though, so you still did go to the cinema when it counted, and Craven.
And Madam Web.
Yeah.
But after Madam Web, you know what? I will give a special mention to those three because all three of those, going with friend of the podcast, Chris, were fun. I had a good time going to all of those because you get out of the movie and there's no like, oh, is someone going to like this? Should we like be chill about it? You're like, that was terrible. Let's talk about it. How would we fix it? What would we have done? What were the dumbest scenes? Oh my God. How did she win an Oscar? You know who I'm talking about. So, yeah, like those were fun too. But that's the thing. Only bad movies, I'm like, oh, that was a great time. That's bad. That's not great.
No, it's not great. And a lot of the ones we thought were going to be really fun sucked. And we'll get there with our biggest disappointments.
Yeah.
But I think first, let's just start positive at the very least, talking about our favorite performances of the year, the actors who really stood out to us, who really delivered this year. Paul, I would love to hear your list. What are your favorite performances of 2024?
All right. Mine is all over the place. Get ready. Some are the Oscar-y ones, and then some are just not. Number one, I could not pick one person, so I'm just going with everyone. The cast of It's What's Inside, every single one of them killing it. Like, I watched that movie, and we'll get into it later, but like, I was like, I believe you are these different characters, and that's so hard in body swap movies, where you're like, okay, yeah. But every single performance, I was like, these are fantastic. They're really just like, you felt their emotion. I cared about characters that the screenplay did not give me any reason to care about. Yeah, really, really good performances. I was really proud of that one. Mikey Madsen in Anora is a obvious. That's my ride or die. Nicholas Hoult in The Order. I thought he was okay in Nosferatu. I thought he was good, but okay in Juror Number 2. I really felt like he found his own as a Nazi. No, but like with those kind of characters, you can play them so one note. And I think he really made it like, I don't agree with you, but I do see like why you've become this person. Like I can see, he really explained a lot of that. And I think that screenplay is also really good at doing that because instead of just being a movie where it's like, these people are evil, it kind of went into the psychology of why, which I found very interesting because it allowed you to judge them more because you also got their like reasoning. It's not like, the Empire in Star Wars where you're like, okay, they're evil. Cool. Moving on. Another one shocked me. Ariana Grande and Wicked. I was so against that choice when she was picked, and I was not against Cynthia Erivo. I didn't love Cynthia Erivo. She's not my most annoying, but I didn't love her performance. But I think Ariana killed it. She really brings the Kristen Chenoweth kind of vibe while still doing her own thing. I think she was fantastic. Kirsten Dunst in Civil War, and to a lesser extent Jesse Plemons, but he's one scene and just kind of the circumstances are what make him so terrifying. But I think that performance could have been really flat, playing a unlikable character. And especially as a woman, you just immediately like kind of dismiss them as bitch. And I think that she really brought like humanity to that kind of character. And then my last two are kind of completely different. Both Channing Tatum and Emma Corrin in Deadpool and Wolverine. I think that there's a, deference to Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, where you're like, oh, they're the stars, they're the big names, let's give them their flowers. But those two performances, both one being comedic and the other being actually scary in a comedy, is like impressive. Also, I think that, choosing a character that is like aggressively stupid in the comics, and making it scary, that's cool. I love that. And then one more was TV shout out, Ambika Maude and Leo Woodall for One Day. I think both of them were super impressive in a role that could have been really cheesy. And I think that was my overall this time, was like really trying to look for things that sometimes they're just like layups. Like, of course, it's going to be a great performance. I think with them, that is one that could have gone really schmaltzy, could have gone Hallmark, and they did not. They were really great, and I hope both of them do more.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Order, but it seems like Nicholas Hoult in that film and the kid from White Lotus and Nickel Boys really found their groove this year as just like evil, horribly racist people.
Oh yeah, Fred Herchinger, who was in everything this year. He and
Yeah,
Nick Holt. It was really weird. At the end of the year, where I was just like, every movie I was saying was Nick Holt or Fred Hetchinger.
for sure.
Yeah.
I want to remind people for my list, our goal here is to have fun. Maybe not necessarily like, I just want to make it clear, like, if you really want the very serious, like, these are the best actor performances, like, maybe go elsewhere. Just preference for my list. Pamela Anderson, I think, is like stunning in Last Showgirl. I love that film. Sad we couldn't talk about it here on the podcast, but I think she especially is like great. I think it's a testament to that film overall, that if you're longtime fans of the podcast, you know how I feel about Jamie Lee Curtis. I absolutely despise that woman. And she is incredible. Like, I was cheering. I think she should get like Oscar nominated here. So that says something about that film. Just trying to Hugh Grant and Heretic is really, really fun. Andrew Garfield in We Live in Time is really good. Well, don't worry, we're gonna get to some that you have seen. I what is a movie is the question. There's a 3-hour film I saw. I would say,
are you about to talk about
dozens.
The People's Joker? Because it's not a movie.
There was a 3-hour film I saw dozens of times this year. I would consider it a film. It was called The Eras Tour, and on these grainy live streams, Taylor Swift. Wow, what a performer. That's definitely on my list. Similar vein, I haven't actually seen the film, but that one, like that Chiefs Christmas film, I didn't see it, but Mama Kels, she's on the list. I don't know why, but she's there. Marianne Jean-Baptiste for Hard Truth. She's incredible. I agree with you. Ariana Grande is incredible in Wicked. Cynthia Erivo, I also like in the film, but I gave both of them a shout out for the press tour specifically. If you want to talk about a lasting impact and really committing to a bit for months and months and months, Cynthia and those nails, shout out both of them. Like, that single-handedly, genuinely, like, I think got the film Best Picture nominated. So good for them. And then finally, I have a unique kind of like subcategory of like, well, they're hot, which is Josh O'Connor in Challengers and Harris Dickinson in Baby Girls. I liked viewing both of those films, and specifically viewing those performances.
Baby Girl. That's. I will say, so like the screeners that I got this year were varied, and there were things missing that I was like, where the hell is A Complete Unknown? I had Wicked. I watched Wicked at home, but I was not able to watch these very basic films. And most of the things were already on Amazon.
Yeah. No, definitely missing some of them, but Baby Girl, it's a fine film. It's like fine, but Harris Dickinson
I love Nicole Kidman, so I'll probably have a great time with it. That I think is my last shot of something that could like be great for me, like specifically me. Although also Last Showgirl, I feel like I could really like.
You didn't like Mainstream, did you? I didn't like it either, but
yeah, I was about to say no, but I liked aspects. I just think this plot was stupid.
I see. Well, those are some great performances. I feel like a lot of people at home probably haven't seen some of those films, so definitely check them out. Now let's hear some words from the good old Nicolo Grasso.
Hey Carson, hey Paul, this is Nick Grasso. Reaching 200 episodes of a podcast is always a big milestone, and I couldn't be happier to see how much and how far Clapper has grown and evolved over the past 4 years. I will never forget how in July 2020 I joined you all to talk about The Painted Bird and a couple of other films. I instantly felt welcomed, like I belonged, and soon I started to appear more and more often, and it's been an absolute joy ever since. Without this podcast, I would not have a good, healthy group of friends to talk about movies and life with. So happy 200th anniversary to ClapperCast, and here's to 200 more episodes.
Getting a little bit sour, our biggest disappointments. I think specifically films we had high hopes for, not just like our worst of the year, but films we really thought we were going to like that did not live up to our expectations. I have a list here. Hitman. I just heard so much about this film going into it, and like, yes, and you can do this. This is a test for anyone who says they love this film. Go ask what you love about it, and they're like, the phone scene. And yes, the phone scene is really great. No one's denying that. The rest of the film is like super boring and not good, and it kind of like gave me the ick on Glenn Powell, which is really sad.
I want to hop in real quick.
Go for it.
Because one of my biggest disappointments was Glenn Powell. I was like, this is his year. He is going to kill it. He's in Twisters. He's in Hitman. You know, he's probably getting an Oscar nom or at least Golden Globe, like, you know, like winning that Golden Globe. And then, no, not at all. And in fact, I'm more bearish on him than I was. I'm like, he may be fine. And you know what? I'm going to add Sydney Sweeney in there too. Although I did like her performance in Immaculate. I feel like you really were on top of the world, and you did Madam Web and Immaculate, and then flip side with Glenn. They should have been overexposed this year. Like, I don't understand how they disappeared.
Twisters is also my biggest disappointment list. I just like Anything But You. That's what it was called, right? At the end of last year was such like a high point. It just felt like finally we found two more movie stars. Then this year they're like just did not do anything, and I'm really worried about them moving forward because I don't think their career trajectory. Like, stick with the really simple romantic comedy. That is where you thrive as like really hot people. Don't go into immaculate horror movies, or don't go into Richard Linklater not funny comedy. Like, it's just, that's not where you should be as an actor. Yeah, sorry.
And I will also say Immaculate, I should put on my biggest disappointments, but I knew I wouldn't like it. It's just disappointment that it exists, because I thought that director did one of the funniest, like, campy thrillers I've ever seen. And then he went into horror, and it was like a dour horror. I was like, no, keep with the like psycho nonsense. Like, I know that's probably, he's now going to have a way bigger career doing this, but yeah, so that was that I'll put on there. Yeah, I guess just them in general. Not very upset with them.
Yes. I was also disappointed by Joker 2. Not that I like the original Joker, but I just like it. I thought it was going to be something, and then it was nothing. The Watchers was really bad. Maxine was really bad. Megalopolis was really bad. I don't know if I really expected that to be good, but like it was terrible. For me, this is my personal list, everyone. Madam Web, Kraven the Hunter, Venom 3, the Sony universe. I've been the only person in the world to enjoy. I like Morbius, y'all. Like, I've always gone to these films and had fun, and they released 3 of the most painful features this year, which is just so sad for me because I no longer can be like, at least I'm going to enjoy them. Just rough. And then I'll also throw on Taylor Swift versus Scooter Braun, Bad Blood. Not because like this was I obviously not going to be like a best documentary feature, like great, but like the premise, at least I thought, if you're going to do this premise of showing her side and his side would have like something. And I was right there next to Paul on his left, I believe, screaming at the TV because like they cannot find an angle, and they just choose like this horribly like, well, should you really believe women when they say they were abused? Like, what if the women are lying? And it's like, that's the only there are claims I guess you could make, but it was like incompetent. It was so frustrating.
This is very funny because in favorite scenes of the year, I said I'm cheating and I'm putting Scooter's version of Bad Blood, because yes, we were sitting there and it was like I was having such a good time because it was like you fully lost it at the TV. Like, you were screaming like it was a football match. Every time they, like, exactly what you said. So much of it is caught up in minutia of like law and contracts that they aren't privy to. So they were just like saying stuff, and they would have people on who are like, you know, well, if someone's successful, can they really have anything bad happen to them? And like, it was just like so funny. Yeah, in general, a lot of the documentaries this year, in terms of like the pulpy fun ones, just really didn't hit. Like, I didn't log them on Letterboxd. I was trying to remember them, but I was like, I watched so many this year. I just feel like, fine, whatever. I love when, like, you know, Tickled is one of my all-time favorite movies. I love when they do like crazy nonsense, and there's just not been much of those recently, which is weird because we're post COVID now. Like the world's, running in a way that like we should be able to have fun documentaries again. I guess shout out to the contestant. That's the only one that I like had a modicum of interest in, and it was less so the actual storytelling, but more the story itself, which I thought was just so insane. And really is one of the things where it's like this is a big cultural difference because it seems crazy to me, and then we can look at The Swan from like 2004, which I watched every episode of. I cried when the girl won at the end. And if you don't know what that show was, it was they took a bunch of ugly girls and then gave them a bunch of plastic surgery and then put them in a beauty pageant against each other. And the most upsetting thing for me of the entire show was there was one girl who got kicked out for looking at herself in the mirror because that was part of it. You couldn't see your own face the entire healing process. And she looked at a mirror and they disqualified her. But the girl that won by each episode, they competed the two girls against each other on who was hotter now. And then one girl got kicked out and one girl got to go to the Swan pageant. And the girl who won because she, the other girl got disqualified was kicked out in the first round. And as a child, I was like, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. Like, you only went to this competition because of disqualification and then immediately got kicked out. Anyway, as an aside, go watch The Swan. Great television.
Did you have any more disappointments?
Oh, yeah. I have so many more disappointments. I haven't actually listed any other than Glenn Powell. It's What's Inside, actually. I think the actors were fantastic. The premise is fantastic. I would say it's closest to, oh my God, what are those movies called? The Purge. There we go. I would say it's closest to the Purge movies where you have these like really cool storylines. And then the first one is not doing anything with that storyline. It just doesn't really try to discuss it in any strong way. And I think that was, kind of a bummer. The plot is boring. The twist is obvious. I had like 3 friends say that they didn't know what the twist in that movie was going to be. And I was like, take an IQ test. Like, another one, Saturday Night. I really thought that I was going to love that movie. And my biggest issue with it is, that Saturday Night Live exists. So when the whole premise of the movie is, will it happen? Yes. I would have just chosen, I was talking to some of my friends and I was like, I probably would have chosen a night and maybe like smushed together a bunch of nights from like the end of the first season where a bunch of people quit and everyone was mad at each other. I think that would have been far more interesting, like, and pretend it's the season finale or whatever. I think that would have been a better choice because, yeah, of course it was going to happen. Like, you're watching this and you're like, whoa. Yeah, we're watching its 50th anniversary right now. Big whoop. Monkey Man, another one that I was like, really thought I was going to like, and I just found it so boring and so cliche. That's my biggest problem with a lot of movies right now is like dialogue has gotten weak. And especially in Monkey Man, I was like, oh yeah, please tell us your life story right now. And yeah, the film overall just didn't work for me. I did like some of the action sequences, but they were few and far between. Budget constraints, but when that's the premise of the movie. And then unfortunately, my biggest disappointment, by far, huge, put it in lights, Challengers. What the fuck was Challengers? I think about that movie regularly because I really do appreciate like Luca's filmmaking, and I love Justin. I read one of his books. which is fantastic. I think it's called Famous People. If you haven't read it, definitely read it. He actually does the audiobook. I would recommend that because he kills it. The story is basically combining Harry Styles and Justin Bieber into one like pop star, and it's him writing his own memoirs, but it's the like first manuscript of it. So he's writing and he's kind of dumb, but he's updating the story as he goes. So you never, it feels like a living document. Like you don't know when like chapters are breaking and all that stuff, in that like you don't know what the time jumps are going to be. He's jumping all over the place. He's telling updates on things that have happened in the book, but he was telling it present tense at that point. Very interesting, very well done. My issues with Challengers, and we will get into it in a little bit, are a lot to do with Luca, and we'll talk about it. Also, I think that the casting, the boys are a little too similar. I understand that like people think they're hot, but they're too similar that I didn't feel like, both in their personality, how they're written, and also in how they look, the casting. I just felt like I didn't feel why there would be a push-pull with specifically Zendaya's character. And I needed that. I needed to see like, you know, you look at the great love triangles where it's like, you know, honestly, the best one of modern time, unfortunately, is Twilight. There is Team Edward, there is Team Jacob, and they are always at war. And there's nobody who's like, oh yeah, I really care about Josh O'Connor more than Mike Fast or whatever.
I'm that person. No one says they care about Mike Fast more than they care about Josh O'Connor in that film. I'll give you that.
I actually prefer Mike 100%. I think Josh is so gross in that movie. Not like his actual look, just his character. Like he's just,
well, sure, yeah.
And it's like, and that's why I think it needed to be someone who, you know, I said I wish it was more of a difference, like Armie Hammer versus Timothée Chalamet, where you're like, oh, okay, I get you're like, you know, these are two very different men with two very different lifestyles. Because I feel like very clearly she could have brought Josh O'Connor up. And it's just, anyway.
I will say I think he's an insane choice to play Bond. Even like I really love him as an actor, but like he does not have any of the Bond qualities, and I think that shows in Challengers.
Apparently that was like Hollywood Reporter doing the same thing as like you know, saying what they believe is going to be Best Picture, and everyone took it as fact. Yeah, exactly. Because I was freaking out about it, and then I read about it, and I was like, oh, it's just some dude said it. Yes, that would be a terrible choice. But Aaron Taylor Johnson's a terrible choice. I have not heard anyone mentioned that I'm like, yeah, that's good.
Do you like Idris Elba?
Too old. Also, like, he's fine, but I feel like because he plays Luther, it would just be the same role again. It's the same reason if the Man from U.N.C.L.E. movies had continued, I would have been against Henry Cavill.
Yeah, not good.
Yeah, like, I just think no one's really interested. Well, specifically because I also think that the thing to do now is to go back to the 60s and do them as period pieces. Tech has gotten so intense now that Bond, you know, like the new Mr. Impossible was all about AI. It's like, okay, this is going to get real boring real quick. So I think that you just need to like take it back to the 60s. And so I think you need to pick an actor who feels like that. And the people that they've been listing feel very like iPhone face.
Did you have any more disappointments? I know we kind of got
No, that was, yeah, that was it for my disappointments. I guess the movie industry in general. You know what? Actually, I will say a special shout out to Netflix not having one movie that was like, oh, I've got to watch that. Like, nothing. We watched one, right? And it's in my worst movies of the year. That's all I have. Yeah, because like usually there's a couple Netflix movies that everyone has to watch, and you're like, okay, we'll do it, but nope.
Yeah, no one really watched Maria. Like none of them. I agree.
I didn't even
It's
know
a
Maria
weird
was a
one.
Netflix movie.
Valid, fair.
I legitimately thought it was like, who did it originally? Who did the other two?
Neon did. I
Oh
don't know
yeah,
if Neon did the first. I think Neon did both. I don't know about
I
Jackie for
wonder why
sure
they
though.
switched over.
I don't know, but
Hmm.
it was weird. Yeah. Let's move on. I think we should stay in disappointments. Let's go to our most annoying performances of the year. The performers that we really hated. Paul, this is always a favorite category of yours. This, I think, if you want to see on this like layout where Paul Price's fingerprints are, probably this one I assume came from Paul. What were your most annoying performances of the year?
Okay, so number one, I think it actually is number one. And this is wild, but I think it's because it tanks the movie. Paul Mescal in Gladiator 2. I think he is
Whoa.
so smiley and so happy while every line says he's a bloodthirsty killer. Insane. There's also, I don't speculate on people's sexuality. He's dating Gracie Abrams, whatever. The tension he has with this random doctor in the movie is so intense that it was like distracting. Every time he and this doctor hung out, Chris and I would look at each other and be like, are they about to fuck? Like legitimately. I don't know why either was playing it the way they were, because it does not fit the characters either. Like the dialogue is not saying it, and they're like rubbing and touching. Oh, so weird. And it's also weird because like the whole movie, his fucking MacGuffin of a dead wife, um, like is supposed to matter, and I'm like, he's very happy with his new doctor boyfriend. And I love, there's one line where the doctor mentions his like wife and kids, and they cut to Paul, and I was like, what was that look? he's definitely supposed to be like sad that he's like, got a family and has to like deal with stuff. And I'm like, it felt like he was like, damn it. But anyway, every single scene with him I thought was bad. I think he's not a bad actor. I liked him in a movie I did not like, All of Us Strangers, but I just, horrible casting. And it really did feel like when you find out that he was cast because of normal people, I blame it on Ridley. Like, how do you watch Normal People, which I've watched a few episodes of, and go, that guy is going to be great for my action movie where in his prime Russell Crowe was one of them, was the original, the originator of that character. Another one was it's a twofer. Daisy Edgar Jones and Anthony Ramos in Twisters. I think Glenn Powell kills it in that movie, regardless of the fact that I don't like the movie. But those two characters are such stick in the muds. I am like, I don't care. Especially when David Cornsweet, who's in it for like 5 minutes, is so much more interesting than anything Ramos does. And I think it's partially fault of the script saying that like he's got to be a good guy. I'm like, make him evil. Like he should be Cornsweet's character, where it becomes a issue. But yeah, Daisy is consistently terrible. I have not seen her in one thing that I've enjoyed. And they really just need to put her out to pasture. Uh, it's time. Uh, Related, actually, take her out the same way. Catherine Newton for Lisa Frankenstein. Catherine Newton is like probably our worst actress, and I'm not being facetious. Every single role this woman has done is bad. she's bad at it, and there's some sort of like snarkiness to all her performances that feel like she thinks she is so good. And I think that's part of it. It's like when I was watching Lisa Frankenstein, a movie I didn't love. It's on my least favorite list. But there were aspects I thought were cool in terms of direction and things. But her performance is just grating. So yeah. And then, unfortunately, for people who, and me, in March, Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain. He is a real pain. There's this aspect of the movie where they try to be like, he's annoying and a piece of shit, but isn't it sad that he... No. And I guess it's a good performance because I hate him, but I do feel like there are lines and deliveries where he pushes past being someone who's just like a little rough around the edges to like grating in a way that never saved the film for me. You'll remember I was watching it with you. They are at dinner, and I just like slid off the couch and just got on my phone. I was like, I can't do this anymore. When they were trying to give him like a backstory that he cares about, I was like, no. You cannot redeem this character in a way that's like, you were wrong. He is awful, but there's a reason for it. I'm like, have some decency. Have some self-respect, Kieran Culkin. But I will actually take him off this list. His character is annoying. His performance is fine. And then my last thing is not a person. It is fingernail peeling. Stop putting it in movies. I legitimately struggle with like, you know, I understand people have like trypophobia and, you know, the inability to watch people vomit and things like that. In stories, some of those just happen, right? Fingernails being pulled off is not a thing that ever needs to be in a movie. There is no storyline where you're like, oh, you know what? I'm really glad that character pulled off their fingernail. The substance, I will give like a little asterisk. I understand why. Immaculate? Why? For what reason are we sitting there and it's like, oh, she pulls off her nail? It doesn't make sense for the character. It doesn't make sense for their emotional journey. It's just like a choice and it's stupid. I hated it.
Awful.
Yeah.
I like that every single year you have at least one Academy Award winning performance or will be Academy Award winning performance on your list.
And you know what? Actually, that's important. Just because other people like something does not mean you have to like it. Stick to your guns. No, it's
Go
like
off, King.
So many people are like, I'll talk to people and, you know, they'll be like, oh, well, I didn't love the movie, but everyone else did. Who the fuck cares? If you literally have no spine, don't review movies. Don't go onto Letterboxd. No one cares if you're just going to regurgitate what everyone else says. We can read someone who's smarter and better than you if that's what you're going to do. If you feel something, say it.
Go off, King. So true. So true. Preach.
Like, even like you and Morbius, which I think is insane. Like, yeah, say it. You like it. You have your reasonings. It's insane, but sure.
It's correct, but we can move on.
I loved Argyle.
That's valid though.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Idris Elba really proved himself in Cats for me to be Bond. So like, you know, go off, King. This might be my most inspired list, I'll be honest, out of this section. The real one I would say is Margaret Qualley in Drive Away Dolls. Just like made the movie, which is already bad, literally unwatchable. Terrible performance.
That's upsetting because I almost put her in my best performances for The Substance.
That's valid. She's not horrific in that film. If you put her in there for Drive Away Dolls, we would have some words. But outside of that, most annoying performances, I'm going to be really honest. The second hour yelling, I think it's an ensemble piece, this award. The second hour that's just pure yelling and Anora, I get that it works with friends maybe a little bit better than me alone on my couch watching my Neon DVD, but I don't care. Atrocious. Like, I like that film. I love the beginning, love the ending. That middle is so painful where it feels like Sean Baker is like, I can be a safety, bro. I can be a saft. I can do it. I can do Uncut Gems. And it's like grating. It truly is like,
you know what?
No.
I will say that I took Anora off Screenplay because of when you talked about it and I watched it again. I was like, I still think it works, but I also don't find it like is necessary. And it's a film that could be almost a tight 90 and be gorgeous. And I understand wanting to give some separation when he disappears. So when he comes back, but it's not in a way that you're supposed to forget about the character. And I think that's a issue. If it was like something where the character needs to be like kind of in the back of your head, all we're doing is talking about that character.
For sure. And like it does work at first. It's not like there's no yelling, but it's like when you go to like the third restaurant or the third location, it's like, okay, we need to calm down.
I think specifically the one that I just lost my like second time watching is the vomiting and all of that. I was like, we have really lost the plot on like what this is about, because that character also like that doesn't matter ultimately. Also it's one of the weirdest lines to me where she's like, can I have that pill that you gave him? And it's like, it just made him throw up. It's both times I watched it.
Bulimic queen.
Like, what are we doing? Yeah, she's like, and I know it's just like, oh, he got high and so he threw up, but it's like, it just does not read right. And then, yeah, the whole thing with the car being towed and everything, like one of those little incidences. I think it should be funnier, I guess, if that was his thought process. Sean Baker's really interesting for me though, because I think he's really great, and then also I just like he may win Best Picture, but I keep expecting like one of these movies is going to be like one of my all-time favorite films, and it's such a weird feeling to be like, come on, do it.
Agreed.
Do it.
I even liked Anora, and I really like some of his earlier work. I'm beginning to get more and more on the train that Sean Baker's a hack, and that's sad because I do like want to like him, but every single film it's like I'm not really seeing it, and I'm actually seeing you try stuff and fail stuff. So like,
I am a ride or die for Red Rocket, but I also grew up with Chuck Palahniuk novels, so like when people are like, it's about a shit character, I'm like, yeah.
Yes, it's not the concept behind it, because his ideas are always pretty good. I think Sean Baker cannot like write and cannot handle the characters that he tries to have, which is why I say specifically he's a hack, is because he just is incapable of delivering what he wants to deliver.
We're going to talk about the hack soon when we talk about 2025 movies, because I am terrified of something. But I don't disagree in general, and this has been a thought I've had for a lot. I don't think a lot of writer-directors need to exist anymore. It does not seem to be working. Have a co-writer. Like, I don't understand, if you are doing everything, have a co-writer. And I think also, doesn't Sean edit his own movies?
Yeah.
See, that's those are the three that need to work together, and if it's all you, James Gunn does the same shit, where it's like, you're like, okay, Rian Johnson, one of you would be fighting with one of you, and the fact that it's the same guy is, you know, causing some issues with the screenplays.
Absolutely. I'm going to be really vulnerable with my next pick for most annoying performance, and I need everyone just to like see I can talk about the negatives of my favorites. In Lady Gaga, the Chromatica tour, she, and I blame more the editor, but Lady Gaga, you know, it's a good drinking game, honestly, if you really want to get fucked up. Every time she says, get your hands up, which is approximately once every 20 seconds, every 15 seconds, actually, let's go with, if you notice that and you're paying attention to that, and it's kind of hard to ignore that, It is grating. It is like embarrassing. This is another one that we watched together, Paul. I think specifically you were kind of like doing some work during it.
Yeah, I was playing
and it
for free.
was
And
embarrassing. It was
you
embarrassing for me.
You had not pointed out. I did not know ahead of time, and I remember doing dishes and being like, "She keeps saying that," because I don't know the song, so it wasn't like, "Oh yeah, I'm just listening to the music." I was like, "This seems excessive." What's funny though is I'm surprised. I really thought you were going to say for Joker. Speaking of Joker, last night I was sitting around just listening to music, and I was like, I should probably watch one more movie. And I wrote Carson, and I was like, okay, I'm going to list 3 movies. If he says Joker, I'm not watching anything. Because he had multiple times already said, like, there's no reason to watch Joker. So if I was not supposed to watch Joker and these other 2 movies don't matter either, I was like, I'm not going to do it. I probably should have watched Maria, but I was just not in the mood for slow.
Yeah, it's also like for this, like Furiosa is not a bad film, but like I don't think there's going to be anything that's like fun to talk about in Furiosa. Like Joker at least had something that like you could shit on.
You know what? I'm going to put another disappointing performance real quick. Sorry. Kinds of Kindness, everyone. And here's the thing.
Yeah.
Not everyone in every skit, but everyone at some point was doing one of the worst performances of their career. It was so interesting because I'd be like, oh, this like, they're killing it in this one. And then the next one would come up and I was like, if they don't get off the fucking screen, like the entirety of the second act, Jesse Plemons, one of the worst performances I've ever seen. And actually the first one, Jesse Plemons was really terrible. But then in the third one, great. Where I found Emma Stone also to be great. But then it was just all over the place. Very bad film, by the way. It should be on my worst list. But I don't think I cared enough. Like, I have forgotten so much about that movie.
Yeah.
Some of my friends will reference it. Like, I had my friend Leah come in town. She's like, oh my God, we should talk about Kinds of Kindness. And I'm like, cannibal? Which is wild. It's about a cannibal and, like...
Is it about a cannibal? Wait, I only remember the third one, I'll be honest.
Yeah, remember he eats...
yeah.
Emma Stone's finger?
Oh, yeah, that did happen. I just appreciate the
first one was
walkouts.
about, like, he's like in a sexual...
I remember the first one was a car accident.
Yeah, but he was like in a sexual relationship with his bot.
Yes.
Also, I remember walking out of this movie and going, the fact that she gets in a car accident and it's not Jesse Plemons in the other car and all the stories were going on, is so crazy to me. Like, you set up like very clearly like, oh, these should all tie together, and the fact that they don't felt like worthless to me. It was very similar to the film a couple of years back, Tales of Tales, which I love. Fantastic. You would actually really like it. It's 3 like fantasy stories, but they all kind of intertwine just a little bit to where you're like, I get why these are all together. Very fun movie. That was probably the only AFI movie that I've like watched that I was like, wow, this was great at the fest and didn't expect to like it. And now they just show random nonsense.
Oh, it's rough. Everyone go check out our Kinds of Kindness review and see if you notice any Easter eggs, maybe about like where I am recording from, specifically with like where Paul might be sitting now. My last 2 most annoying performances, this kind of goes back to what you were saying. I think the critics who saw Emilia Perez at Cannes and then tweeted like, it's really, really great. It was a good performance because people believed you. The Academy believes you to this day that it is wild that film might be the most nominated non-English language film of all time because it is terrible and it's also like weirdly problematic. Shout out all the critics who just like got swept in that and then went to a film festival and tweeted like, it's so good. Oh my God, Selena Gomez. Wow. Because I agree, Selena Gomez, wow, just not in the way that you are all saying it. And then finally, and this is a little unfair because I've been somewhat in these shoes. I know it's a minimum wage worker, but the guy who came in to do the live action bit for my Megalopolis screening fucked it up so badly, and it's like really upsetting because I saw this bad movie and I watched like it's 3 hours long. I didn't pay, I have A-list, but like people paid to be in the IMAX theater specifically that day to watch this guy come and do it. And his timing was off, and to the point where like I didn't even know it was happening when it was really disappointing. Again, I know you're just some random like teenager, but like I wish it was a big part of the film.
Yeah, I would also say the fact that they only did like 4 of those, just hire an actor. Like this is where this is very inside baseball for LA, but the death of like the arc lights and everything, a real big issue, because yeah, ArcLight would have fucking done it, right? Back in the day when they were still around, before the movie starts, they would have one of the employees come out and do a presentation on the movie you were about to watch. And it was so cool. It felt like TCM, like old Turner Classic Movies, like, here's what this film's about, and here's the directors, and da-da-da-da, and here's the runtime. That was always so nice. Like, to know, like, okay, here's what we're in for. Yeah, it was great. I loved it every single time. And I don't understand why we haven't brought something like that back, even just on the screen would be nice.
There's a small theater near me who still does it, and it's absolutely lovely because it's always like an elderly man all dressed up who has like an accent who's like, welcome to your screening of Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And it's like, oh, this is great. Actually,
that is nice.
Love this.
I will also say one more thing about annoying performances. The trigger warning before blink twice. I have never been more uncomfortable in my entire life. The tension in that room during that minute of silence with a black screen saying, if you've been sexually assaulted, you're not going to like this movie, was so wild. I was in a packed theater and everyone was just like, which is the exact opposite of what it's supposed to do. There is no way that, like, you're not going to that movie based on the trailer if you have those kind of issues. And it also felt like something that people were just like, oh, this will be something that like people appreciate. No, it was real bad. And I'm glad that it has not become like, everyone kind of like brushed it aside and it's not become part of the culture. 'Cause yeah, also it spoiled the entire film.
Yeah, that's the thing. I didn't realize until I saw it, because you mentioned that and I kind of brushed it off, and then I watched the film, and it really does like ruin the entire experience of like what the movie's trying to do plot wise. It really is like rough.
Yeah, and it's also just like, it's a minute. It is up there, and you're just like, okay, and it's long. Like the whole text is very long, so you're just sitting there reading, and as soon as you know what it's about, you're like, okay, cool. But also, what are you going to be, the person that leaves? How are you going to leave now? If you have any issues with sexual assault, well, that's out for me, guys. Thanks. Goodbye. Everyone in the theater just watching you like, ugh, rough. Horrible. So bad.
Now let's hear from Randy Burrows.
Hey, Carson, and everybody over at ClapperCast. Randy Burrows here from Uncut Gems. Look, I really love what you guys do over at that show. I don't know if I ever told you this, but back when your show got started, we were in the throes of a pandemic, and for me, I stumbled across Clapper and Uncut Gems and ClapperCast all at the same time. So when I was at work, I would take a stroll, and it was important to me to have this stroll every day. And one day I would listen to Uncut Gems, and one day I would listen to ClapperCast. Didn't miss an episode for the longest time. So I was always ever impressed with the work Carson, Alina, Jack, everyone did on the show. And I really enjoyed listening to those episodes, very, thoughtful analyses. And then when I became closer to the Clapper community, I realized, oh my God, this guy's like 19. You, Carson, you're 19. It's like, wow, like so poised and mature. And I always appreciated, your thoughtful analysis. And I thought it was interesting, various choices you made along the years too in your little projects, like the Keaton and Chaplin series. That was sort of a fun one. And Lena's various anecdotes from different theaters in Ottawa were always sort of interesting to me, because I know some of the cinemas like Mayfair and Bytown by name. And then, one day you dropped a story, Carson, about, dealing with kinkajous. And it's like, kinkajous, they're a really freaking cool animal. How's this guy have all this experience? And he's only like 19 or something. And anyway, I've always really admired the show, admired the discussions, admired the fun you guys had along the way. And it was an absolute thrill recently to be on an episode with you and talk about Lost Highway, one of the coolest films of the late 90s from one of the coolest directors, David Lynch. So that was a really, really fun time. And now here you are hitting episode number 200. So that is certainly something that Clapper can be proud of. Carson, you're the man at the center of it. You can be very proud of that achievement. No small affair. So I look forward to what you do in the future, and I hope you have more and more episodes, hundreds more episodes. That would be absolutely fantastic, and I hope to be there to join you for some of them. So all the best, happy holidays to the ClapperCast family, and I hope you have a fantastic new year and look forward to everything you do. Cheers.
Let's move to a more positive direction. Our favorite directors of the year. I will start because I honestly have a very small list here.
I do too.
Luca Guadagnino, I think, killed it with both Challengers and Queer. I know you have issues with Challengers. I think both these films are absolutely fantastic. And I do think it's unfair that some people are like, wow, Luca worked so hard. He put out 2 films in 1 year. Definitely was just because of the strikes. I don't know why everyone's like acting crazy here. Like Luca really did something insane. But still a great year for him. Rose Glass, I hated Saint Maud. You can go back in the archives of this podcast. Did not like Saint Maud, but I really enjoyed her work with Love Lies Bleeding. Edward Berger for Conclave is fantastic. I thought him as director, and I really liked his work. I liked All Quiet on the Western Front. So he's definitely inspired for me. And then Ridley Scott. I'm a big Ridley stan. I know, Paul, you have issues. I know Alina especially hates that man, has a personal drama with Ridley. But the fact that he made something like Gladiator 2, which is a film I really like, and he made it when he's mid 80s is insane. So shout out Ridley. Paul, what are your favorite directors of the year?
So I did not write down their names because I just don't do that. But I do have The Order. I have Nora. I have Conclave as well. And the one that surprised me, and I just recently watched this, but The Substance, which I do not think I liked as a film, but the direction is really impressive. It's the first movie. You know what? It's like when we were talking about it just doesn't feel like there are a lot of movies this year. It feels like a movie. I think that some of the plot stuff kind of hinders it, especially once you get into the 2-body aspect. And I don't know if it has anything to say, unfortunately, because it's competing with how the world views women and also addiction. And those are 2 separate things, because it's not an addiction to beauty. It's just very clearly an addiction. So that was annoying. But outside of that, beautiful film in terms of how it was shot. Everyone talking about the coats and her outfit. It has so many iconic outfits, which is crazy for a movie that's not a huge budget like Wicked, which is not on my best director list. And yeah, I think that's it because I put some others in my favorite screenplay, and I don't want to double up.
Well, let's keep the good vibes rolling with our favorite scenes of the year. What scenes stood out to us? I will start. I think that in Heretic, which is a film I like the first half a lot better than the second half, but his entire monologue about comparing religion to board games, I think is really, really strong writing. I appreciate that. The You Are Dying sequence in I Saw the TV Glow, especially the second time around where I was very high in the theater. A really, really haunting scene. I guess it was just it's because it's a guy and then he just basically starts talking directly to the audience in a way that I could see not working for a lot of people, but for me really connected. I'm a John Couture stan if you follow the podcast, so when he popped up in Queer, that was great. Any hot moment in Challengers? I'm a simple man. I'm a simple gay man.
Where
when there was any
where
moment,
were the hot moments in Challengers?
Anyway, moving on. Late Night with the Devil, excuse me, I believe it's called. It's not a film I love, but there's a sequence here where they use hypnosis. Did you see Late Night with the Devil?
Yes.
There's the hypnosis scene that I thought was like brilliantly written. I thought really, really strong as far as like, because my biggest pet peeve in horror movies is when there's like, and shout out Smile 2, which is literally just entirely these sequences where it's like a dream sequence and then it flashes back and nothing happened. And it's like, well, that was stupid. That had no purpose. Like, why was that there? I think Late Night with the Devil really transcended that in a strong way that really worked for me. And then finally, and this is going to be maybe a little bit, contradictory to what I'm going to say about this film elsewhere on this podcast. The ending montage of Venom 3, The Final Dance, is the one scene where I think like it gets to be just stupid fun in the way that I really appreciate Venom. From the song choice to the clips, because there's not enough clips really within any of the 3 Venom films for a montage. So you're playing sequences just that you like just saw 10 minutes ago in the film. It's just like, it's one of the worst scenes of the year, undoubtedly. But because of that, and because and I think it has to know that, it's the one point in that film where like authentically I was smiling and laughing and having fun in the theater. The rest of it, painful, horrible, even compared to the other Venom films, which are already quite bad. But I think that's the one scene where I was like, yes, this is what is actually fun about these films, is that they embrace that silliness. So I appreciated that scene, to be honest. Paul, what are your favorite scenes of the year?
I have a very, very short list. I think the final scene in Enora is really well done, in a way that could have been really terrible. I think it works really well. My campy one that I have is the gasoline oil ice skating from Argyle, which does not like is impossible to even consider it working, because they say, oh, we can't shoot guns because it'll spark. Let me take metal and I'll ski around. It's so dumb, but it's dumb in a way that like is breathtaking. And I was like having the time of my life. I felt like I suddenly had stumbled in from a movie that was like trying to be something into like Austin Powers. And I was like, this is great. Another one that I'm going to say like that's a little surprising is the Deadpool and Wolverine like synergy scene at the end of the film. Unfortunately, it worked for me. Like in a like I am a kid. This is, and I'm like, yeah, that like they're gonna die, and it's they care, and it's like the rest of the movie fakes a heart, and that's the first time where I was like, oh no, there is like we do care about Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. We do care about I don't love the Deadpool movies in any way, but like. And they're not dying, but it's like a fun moment just to be like, oh, okay. And, choosing the Madonna song is great. And it's like, there's just like something about it that just feels like really bombastic and really cool. And then I'm going to cheat and say the last 2 episodes of One Day, specifically, I think is some of the best filmmaking. And people who call it corny are wrong and stupid. These are the same people that probably like It's a Wonderful Life and Shawshank Redemption. Anytime things are like emotive, I just see like people like react very poorly to it, and they're stupid, and I hate it, because like I think that there's something about like quaint kind of filmmaking, Forrest Gump, those kind of things, where like real emotion just doesn't vibe well. Anyway, I love that the whole last 2 episodes. I had a great time with that show. Did you ever watch it?
No, I was about to say I need to watch it.
Yeah, it's fast too.
I think January is going to be a big TV month for me.
Yeah,
I have a lot of TV to catch up on.
Yeah,
so I'll add to the list.
That's the other thing, and I only like shows that are short. So that's almost all that I watch, which is funny because I also like don't love just putting on a movie, and I think it's the same reason I don't like watching long shows. the amount of shows I gave up on this year. Actually, quick shout out to both Patty LuPone and Aubrey Plaza for Agatha All Along. I think they are getting destroyed by fucking Catherine Hahn, who is great, but just doing her character. When they did these really nuanced, good performances, and Catherine, I felt like, is just being fun. That is also a show that I think almost works. I think the first episode and the fifth episode are terrible, and that's a huge issue. Fifth episode specifically, I think, is one of the worst things I've ever watched, and it's because you can feel Kevin Feige's little fucking fingers all over it, and you're like, I don't care. Stop setting up shit. Follow the story that we're following. Oh, we're gonna introduce. I don't want to know. Just show me it later. It's the same, actually going back to movies, what Sonyverse keeps doing, where it's setting up something and you're like, then give me the sequel. Why are you giving me the first one? I don't need this. I don't want this. No one wants this. Very clearly. Even Venom, it's an origin story, but it moves so fast out of origin that it's not an origin story. But Craven took the entire movie to set up, and and the thing that's interesting is the implied teaser. Madam Web, you cast Sydney Sweeney and then had her in the suit in flash forward. I don't get it. So that was my favorite scenes.
No, I don't. I don't get it either. I know we've talked about Agatha all along.
Wait,
I'll just quickly go for
favorite scene is actually another terrible one, but I had a great time. Is the dubbing of the
villain in
Madam Web, specifically in the first scene where it dawns on everyone that it's happening. That it's so good. I was sitting there with all of my friends, and we all just we just look at each other, and we're like, oh no. Also, they did that in Craven, but they used the same actor, so it was less noticeable. But I think the entire film is dubbed over. I think Sony has a real problem with their sound crew, because that keeps happening. Where you're sitting there and you're watching and you're like, is this dubbed? Which is why I did not put her in worst acting this year, even though I thought she was really terrible. I've forgotten her name. Ariana DeBose, I don't know. But I think most of her lines were dubbed by her, but later, because her face was moving more than her mouth was saying the words. And I really felt like they brought her in and she's like, you want me to do what? Okay, fine. Because it just every single line with that character was blah, 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 blah. But she's moving and stuff, which just feels weird. That's not how you would perform. And I know was great in West Side Story. Give her just another musical.
Doesn't she have one coming out soon?
I don't know. She's as an aside, looking at her career really makes me want to cry for her. She's in Love Hurts, I think is what you're thinking of.
Yes, you are correct. That's what I was thinking of. Which I will not be watching, but I love that for her, I guess.
Yeah.
Hey, she was in Argyle.
She was in Argyle. She was in Wish, and she was in Craven.
It's been a rough few.
And you know what sucks?
Years.
Is her agent actually killed it. Those all should be if you look at it, you're like, yeah, of course. The star of a Disney movie musical, a new action adventure movie where you're a character who only appears a little bit, but has chances to be in other ones. Could get her own spinoff. Craven. You're the female lead in Craven. Great.
I feel like she would have been a really good evil queen in Snow White, opposite of Zegler. But
that would have been interesting. But you can't recast her with the 2 year ago reteaming. What is this? Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet in Revolutionary Road.
We don't need to get into that film quite yet, but I think that recasting probably would create some better reactions than what they ended up going with, but we will see. We'll definitely probably not talk about that ever again. Now let's hear from Jakub Flasz.
Hi Carson, Jakub here from the Uncut Gems podcast, sending you a quick message to congratulate you on ClapperCast turning in its 200th episode. Actually, honestly, holy shit, this is amazing news. I'm super happy that ClapperCast is still going strong, having started in summer of 2020? Do you know how long ago this was? And actually, being perfectly honest, ClapperCast has always had a very special place in my heart because we kind of have been there all together as this sort of throughout the pandemic with Clapper and everything. So, I always feel nostalgic about coming back to this show, and I always make sure whenever I catch up with the movies you guys cover, because sometimes you cover them months ahead of when I get to watch them, to go and listen to your conversations. And do you know what? I really need to make an appearance once more because I really miss having conversations about movies that are actually new sometimes. So, once more from the Uncut Gems podcast, your friendly neighborhood podcast about movies no one gives a shit about. Happy 200 episodes. Here's to 1,000 more. Here's to 2,000 more. Let's make podcasting fantastic. Indie podcasting is the bomb. And you rock. So take care.
Moving on to favorite screenplays. I'm going to be really quick. I think both Challengers and Queer, that Justin kid, pretty good at writing a screenplay, I would say. I know you have personal drama with him.
I don't have personal drama. He just didn't respond to my message.
Yeah.
Which is just, okay, so here's my other thing. It's less that. I just really liked that book. So good. Again, read Famous People. Fucking fantastic. I hope he writes more. I kind of hope he moves back into comedy. I'm not digging his drama as much.
Sure.
Although, I will say, Challengers isn't my favorite screenplays.
Whoa!
And here's why. When I think about what I don't like in that movie, it is casting, and it is the change in the ending. Spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it, skip ahead a couple seconds. In the original ending of the screenplay, you do not know who won. All you see is her reaction, which is the whole fucking point of the goddamn movie. You're supposed to be like, oh, she has made her choice. Someone won. That is, and who won, she's excited for. Instead, Luca makes it to where it's about the boys, but the boys are pawns in her story. They are not the main characters. They never were the main characters. By making them the main characters in this last moment where they hug each other, you do not believe that the story is now over. In that version, whatever happened, the story is over. She has chosen her boy, and that's going to happen. And all of the drama and all of that, it all came down to that. And you don't know which one it was. Has she ruined her life, blowing up her marriage, or is she staying with her husband? That is the entirety of the story. So to do it in a different way is completely flipping it. So I think that those are my two big issues. Another quick thing about Challengers, I wish Josh O'Connor had put on weight. It's one of my biggest issues in that whole movie. I wish when he's sitting there in the future, he's a little schlubby. The fact that he's still fit, he can just have a mild dad bod. But the fact that he's still fit, I'm so really, he's not oh, maybe they're on the same level now. Because I think that that's a huge issue with the movie is who knows who's going to win? And you're the guy who's better and still at peak condition. There's no possibility that the other guy's winning. So yes, but I will say that the screenplay is really great. I also do want to see Queer. The more people hate it, the more I think I'm going to at least have an interesting time with it. I will say when Film Twitter hates a movie, very rarely do I agree. And they do not like Queer.
Okay, but typically when Carson Timar gives a film 5 stars, you don't agree either.
That is true. So you know what? It's a coin flip. That's so fun.
I can't
it's
see a world
almost
where you like it.
there's a tennis match going on, and then you don't know how it's going to end.
We just have to zoom into your face when it finishes
yeah.
and see the scream you give off.
Yes. Have you read the screenplay, by the way? Fantastic. You should read it.
For which one?
Challengers.
Yes, I've read it.
Yeah, because I read it before the movie, and I think that's partially why I was upset, because I was like, this is like.
Well, I saw the film a year in advance, so I couldn't get that luxury. I had to read the screenplay after.
Well, the screenplay was like out for like years.
I don't know.
That's the fun thing. If there's a movie and it's not a Marvel movie, and you want to know what it's about, screenplay is probably around. You could just go like search, and it's like just sitting around. Famously, I read Midsommar like a year and a half before, and that movie got improved. I hated that screenplay.
Wow.
It had so much, like, it had this whole thing with like her sister ending her own life and like it coming back all the time. It was just like a huge plot point.
Huh.
And also they changed how every character died. Like every character, like, which was very funny watching it. I was like, wait, you died this way. And then it was like, oh, the other guy's dying this way now. Yeah, very interesting.
I'll say is if you want to talk about Midsommar, or you want to hear a ClapperCast recording about Midsommar, stay tuned next year. We're going to possibly do an episode on it.
Oh, that's fun.
Other favorite screenplays. Diddy I really like. I saw The TV Glow I really enjoyed. His Three Daughters on Netflix.
I keep forgetting Diddy is not P. I was like, really love where that story's been going.
Not Piss, the movie about the kid. I really liked His Three Daughters. I really like that film director and screenwriter in general, but I think that film was really well written. And then Evil Does Not Exist, the Hamaguchi movie. I didn't love Drive My Car at all. Like, I thought it was fine. I thought this one is like 90 minutes, way more condensed, way more focused, way more poignant and pointed with where it goes. Really surprised by that one, actually. Paul, what are your other favorite screenplays other than Challengers?
I had Memoir of a Snail. I have issues with that movie, like intense issues, more that he had time to do introspection and did another of the similar. But it's like when Taylor does her re-releases, I'm not going to complain with more content. Like, I still had a great time. I was just watching it and I was like, oh. I think it's just that I expected so much after years. But it could have been an entire disaster flop. So the fact that it's still really fun, I think his animation has gotten so much better. I went and watched a little bit of Mary and Max after, and I was like, wow, which is funny because people are like really complaining that it's too ugly. And I'm like, that's the point. But anyway, it's the same as Dickens, right? You know, like, you're not going to be like, Dickens, you wrote about another poor boy who has a bad life. It's like, yes, that's what he does. This is going to be his art. And then my last one is Civil War, which I was debating putting it in either director or screenplay. I did it in screenplay because I fully disagree with everyone, like harshly, on the people who say that it should be a like direct retelling of our lives and like what could possibly happen. You know, Texas and California. Yes. And here's my reasoning for this. I think that we watch movies and we see war on the news and things about other countries, and we don't know what's going on. We're like, oh, that looks bad. Oh, not great. And then we just move on. And I think that that's how this treats America. It doesn't really matter what's going on. It's like presidents in power, stayed too long, war broke out, everyone's mad at each other. Doesn't matter anything else. So like that happens in countries, you know, you like see like, you know, with South Korea where, you know, they declared martial law for 10 minutes. Like what was the lead up to that? No one not the average person at least, knows like the behind the scenes of what happened there. What's going on with Germany right now, we don't know or particularly care. And I think that having us, it's just funny for Americans to have us watch something about our own storyline, and because it's not centered on like how we view America and it being the most important thing, and them going, but we're the most important thing. I should know, like, it should speak to me. Why is this British man talking about American politics? That's the whole fucking point, you moron. Because like it really made me think about all these other countries that I just like disregard. I'm just like, yeah, it's sad that stuff's going on in foreign countries, but it's like when you're watching your own, like our landmarks and stuff, and you're like, the attack on the White House, that should have been in my best scenes, actually. Until they breach the White House, I think that's gets a little hokey, but the entirety of when Kirsten Dunst for the first time reacts to war in a way she never has because she's been pushing it down. So good. So good. Actually, so many good scenes. I regret that I did not put more of those. And
you're not even mentioning though, because you also have a great take, and I'm sure you can find it on Letterboxd or somewhere, maybe even a podcast somewhere. You have a great take on what that film does as far as journalism and how war changes journalism, and like, there's a lot more to the screenplay than even you are presenting. That like, I didn't like the film, and then talking to you like sold me on the film so much more than I originally had it.
It was basically that each of the four main characters are a different aspect of how journalism interacts with war. And if you look at the four main characters, they each have a perspective that is different and how it changes and who they become. And I think that film is really genius. I'm so upset that he's doing some sort of like Iraq war movie now, because I feel like now he's going to do in the same way that like Guy Ritchie does like 7 war movies and you don't really keep one as like, that's his war movie. Like Ridley, who did one of my all-time favorite movies with Black Hawk Down, I think he just did the one. He probably did more war movies, but it's the main one. It's the one that you know for him. And so it's like, that allowed it to give some like resonance later, because it kind of blew up when I was a teen, and it was after it had come out. And side note on that story, real quick, totally off topic, but my parents stayed at this place in Arkansas, and this woman was like, "Oh, my son's story is Black Hawk Down, and he's the one who dies." And like she explains it, and I'm watching, and it's like, if you've seen the movie, it's a scene where the guy's like leg bursts open and he's like bleeding everywhere. And I'm like, the mom watched this about her own son. Oh, and then telling people like, just wild. It's like you were just spilling trauma everywhere. So anyway, but yeah, a good year for screenplays. Actually, I think there are some good screenplays. I think that movies weren't great, but like those are two different mediums.
Absolutely. Now let's hear from Alina Faults.
Hey, ClapperCast crew. Congratulations on 200 episodes. This is Alina. I feel like I was there for at least half of them. We had some good times over these like past 200 episodes. One of my personal favorites was when Carson and I reviewed The Iron Claw, which I saw 3 times in theaters, while drinking White Claws. I think that was hilarious. Yeah, I don't know. I had a really good time. Maybe I'll make my return to ClapperCast one day soon. Happy 200.
Let's go to the bottom of the barrel. Let's talk about the worst, our least favorite films of the year. I'm going to go really quickly through any ones I have talked about already. Like, yes, of course, Madam Web is terrible. All My Friends Are Dead, the Jojo Siwa horror movie, is awful. It is the Jojo Siwa horror movie, so I don't know if you would expect anything else. Karma really is a bitch. Uglies, the Joey King Kingdom is employed not by good screenplays or good directors or good movies, just bottom of the barrel Netflix stuff, but it was pretty terrible. Venom 3 was terrible. Joker 2 was bad. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, I like made it a point not to see it in theaters. Then all my friends were like, we're going to go see Ghostbusters. And I was like, please no. And then it was
Ghostbusters I could have
terrible.
put in biggest disappointments. Because for some reason, I was feeling that it was going to be fun. I don't even like Ghostbusters. Something about it just like really felt. I loved the idea that it was like Frozen.
It's a fun switch up for sure.
I also thought the villain was kind of cool looking. I think was a huge part of it.
Sure.
But so bad with the fucking ghost girl.
Driveway Dolls is awful, and then finally, yes, of course, Emilia Perez. I've ranted about it a lot in this podcast, so not gonna go too in depth here, but like, I think the performances are bad, the songs are bad, the plot is bad. I think it's weirdly problematic. I think it's not fun. It just in every way, outside of Carla's performance, who I think is fine, like she's doing the most with the least. I thought the film all around was like really terrible.
I have to say, I think she does really well as Amelia. I think she is terrible pre-transition. Well, not a little bit bad, like terrible. I was struggling. I was like, this may be the worst movie I've ever seen. And then once she transitions, I was like, okay, well, now the performance is like better. Yeah. Also, I love that Emilia Perez is just the worst person.
Yeah, no, awful.
Like,
well, you texted me that so early in the film. I was like, hold on, you've not even seen like anything yet. Like, it just keeps going down.
The shit out of Selena Gomez, and we're supposed to be like, "Aw." The fuck.
It's really cool when they make her like use like her man voice, because remember the man's always in there. Like that was really like me at Cannes cheering, woo, representation. Yeah, I love this.
My favorite is that the number one Letterboxd, well, of the people I haven't blocked, but the number one review that I have on Letterboxd is that there's a whole song about how she still smells like a man, even though that's not how that works.
No, it's like on a biological level, it doesn't work like that.
It says she smells like an old car.
It's sad because this director is a director I like. I know you really like Rust and Bone from him. Like
he's just is one of my all-time favorite movies.
Obviously is such like the wrong person for this film, and no one is like a lot of people are talking about it, but not critics.
He like did this as a like operatic musical situation already. He like loves this story. It's so weird. Like you were like, what was funny is you kept going, oh, you know, you love this director, and I was like, who is it? I'm like, what? Why would you do this? And then it's been his like life goal. Was that your last one?
Yes, that was my last one.
Cool. So mine are Blink Twice, I think, is another film that should work for me and just does not. Like there are aspects I really liked, but specifically, you know, I actually do have to call out because I hated that film, but 2 performances in it. I will give minor to Channing Tatum, who's fine. But I thought he was better before he like did his change. Like the underlying menace I thought was really well done. But shit. Okay, well, Adria Arjona, who plays just the girl who's the bitch and then is like a good person eventually. I think she was fantastic. That's a really hard character. That's another one. And then also Gina Davis, I thought was great. But spots in terrible film. And in general, I think it's terrible. I think it has weird messaging. I don't love the spoilers for a terrible film. I don't love retribution in that kind of way where you abuse the abuser. It feels weird. It feels gross. I don't like the messaging there at all. The Deliverance, the only Netflix movie I watched this year. It's a horror film. Terrible. But it did have one of my favorite lines of all time. I cannot say it. You've probably seen it on Twitter. I was watching with my friend the weekend it came out, so I had not seen the memes yet. And basically, Glenn Close's character says something really racist, but the way it's said, the way it comes out, and how she looks in that moment is so funny. I was crying laughing. Saturday Night, terrible film. I already talked about it. A Real Pain. Okay, I want to talk about this real quick. It is my biggest issue. It is The White Lotus Season 2. If you go watch that fucking movie and know it's The White Lotus Season 2, it just is. Including, not limited to, the literal, like, wrap up of the storyline in Season 2 of White Lotus ends at them finally getting to the house that, like, matters to them, and it blowing up in their face because the people don't want them there and don't care about their bullshit. That is what happens in this movie. So, my issue, Jesse Eisenberg, is that you watched a movie and watched a TV show and just stole it and made a movie. Like, there is nothing in that is, like, original.
Even took a cast member from
Even the cast member. It's like him going, like, and then, casting Kieran Culkin. It's like, okay, cool. We all watch HBO. Go shave your head again, you stupid moron. I cannot stand Jesse Eisenberg. I have never liked Jesse Eisenberg. He's like one of those actors to me that he and everyone dislikes him now, Shia LaBeouf. Both of them, I just get the vibe that within 3 seconds, you would, like, want to kill yourself. Miles Teller as well, although I've met Miles Teller and he is like that. So I can't guess on it. But
did you like him in The Social Network at least?
No. I mean, he's fine, but I don't think he's good enough to...
I think he works because that persona, I agree with you. I'm not a big Jesse
Yeah,
Eisenberg
but I also
like,
don't think I don't feel like everything I've seen of Mark Zuckerberg, I feel like he didn't really do Mark Zuckerberg, and that's kind of an issue to me. I think Mark is a little... even now that he's, like, cool, there's, like, something a little alien about him, and I feel like he didn't get that. I feel like he just was doing Jesse Eisenberg, and that's my biggest issue is, like, it's one of those where it was like, it's a revelation. It's like, no, that's just him. It's like, he's doing the same shit every single time. Getting spicy. That movie really pissed me off, because, like, I think about it more and more, and I'm like, this scene and this scene and this scene and these characters, even, like, the fact that each one of them is kind of like a White Lotus-y kind of character is just, like, wild. And no one calls it out, which is so weird. Everyone's like, it's so original. Lisa Frankenstein. But then I think my worst movie of the year, Red One. Horrendous. Because here's the thing. As you have probably seen, I love a good trashy movie. I have a great time with it. There's nothing even fun in that. It was a soulless cash grab. And I love the Jumanji movies. So this felt like it had a real chance. And I am a ride or die. He's really fucking me over recently. But I have been a ride or die for Chris Evans since fucking A Perfect Score in, like, 2004. I was like, this guy is a star. And I was right, except... Anyway. That was... Red One is terrible. It's not even fun. It doesn't even have any interesting, like, moments to it. It's so cold and calculated. Kiernan Shipka's fine. She's good. I think that poor girl needs a new agent, but she's fine.
I think there's two things, because I just watched Red One last night, and you'll notice it's not on my worst of the year list. It's not good, but I think watching it from home where you can get drunk and be on your phone, it helps tremendously. Also, I just was so prepared for it to be horrifically awful, because people like you said it was, and then I thought it was fine. Both myself and Alina thought that way.
No, she didn't like it.
She said it was fine. She said she had fun with it. What do you mean?
I thought until the
Snowman.
That's
what she said in the group
but
chat.
Also, the thing is, like, you guys do sometimes like those kind of movies. I really no, but, like,
I didn't like it. Let's be clear. But
I don't like soulless films. There's something
Sure.
I would love a giant misfire, Argyle, over something.
Well, I agree. I would rather watch Argyle any day than Red One. I just thought like it was fine, right? Like I just didn't think it was painful to sit through.
See, and I guess boring is so hard for me. Like when nothing.
Well, I agree though. I mean, like Twisters, I think is like unbearably boring. Even like
why
Teton,
did I watch that
I think,
twice? Oh
no, that's crazy. Teton is incredibly like I really hate boring films. I think Red One just did enough with like iconography to be like, it's fine for a first viewing. I would never watch it again, but it was fine. Going to our biggest positive surprises. I have a few. Obviously, I already talked about Love Lies Bleeding, so I'm going to cross that off the list. Both The Fire Inside and Better Man are like genre films that could have been just so basic and so average and just had enough to them to really set them apart and like be memorable for me this year. Juror number 2, Clint Eastwood. Always an up or down, right? And has recently been more down than up. Richard Jewell didn't necessarily do it for me. The Mule.
Love Richard Jewell.
You do?
Love Richard Jewell.
Insane.
I love Richard Jewell. I was like, that man should win Best Actor. Oh, I fucking love it.
I will say how sad he's dropped off the face of the earth. Out of all the actors to do it, I thought he had talent, and now he's just done nothing ever again. I forget his name. Richard Jewell himself, yes.
He just got cast in something huge. I
know he's done some TV.
I have a theory on why we haven't seen him. Starts with an O. I think we will see him very thin all of a sudden. Whenever a man disappears for a little while, I'm like, he's on Ozempic.
Everyone, Golden Globes, red carpet, keep an eye out. He will probably be there. That's when we will know for sure. But juror number 2, the point is, I've not been a big Clint Eastwood stan recently. I thought this was so fun, to the point where I'm really sad we didn't watch it together because I was texting you throughout. I think actually we watched it like the same night.
Which one?
You were just juror number 2. You were watching a little bit ahead of me. And I was like texting you throughout being like, oh my God, I'm losing my mind because it's just the stupidest characters making the stupidest decisions in a way that is like very, very fun and entertaining. And then my last choice for biggest positive surprise, now that I love the film, and this is going to be a shock, this is going to be a out of nowhere pick, is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2. The first one was like obviously a 1-star horror movie. And this is still not good. It's like 2 stars. But this crew and this cast, for considering their concept is like just taking Disney films in the public domain and making really cheap horror movies out of them, they're genuinely trying to like build craft to these things and genuinely trying to make things of quality when they like do not need to. It's not going to increase the selling point of these films, but I really appreciate that. If you've seen the puppet they post on social media or the robot or whatever it is for Pinocchio, like it's genuinely like they took the money and invested it to make something that looks really good. Again, no need to. The results are even still not like a great movie. But the fact that they're putting more and more effort into these films is just strange, but I appreciate it. So Winnie the Pooh 2, shout out. Like you actually took a really terrible film and then like try to make a good film. A lot of even really good directors won't do that, won't put that effort in. So I appreciate you. Weirdly.
Actually, that probably connects to what I was talking about with The Purge, where the first Purge is terrible and they tried it again and like they never get great, but at least they like did the concept right.
For sure. Paul, what are your biggest surprises of the year?
Number 1 is Wicked Little Letters. I had no clue what it was, and I just like walked in and I was like, this is great. This is fun. I love a little British comedy. I should probably have put Olivia Colman as one of my favorite performances on there. Deadpool and Wolverine, don't need to talk about it a lot more, but I think that film is actually, and you can read my letterbox, I won't talk about it too much. I think that film is actually really strong in terms of how it takes the meta-ness of what Disney did to Fox, the destructive nature, and has Disney make a movie about it and like basically makes them the villains of this film. And I find that very fascinating. Like Kevin Feige is in this movie. He's Matthew McFadden's character, and he's evil and terrible, and like he doesn't care about anyone. And you know he's having meetings with Deadpool, and it's the Feige's meeting with Ryan Reynolds. So I find it very fascinating that Ryan Reynolds was able to go, hey, so how shitty you were to everyone I loved, all these Fox people. We're going to do a movie about that. And they were like, yeah, sure. Everyone involved. I just don't understand how that movie exists. I would put it in best screenplay, except for the fact that Ryan Reynolds all over it. And I think that a lot of the sex jokes are stupid and don't need to be there. That film, I think, could have had a moment if he had like held off on that stuff. Because even like I've talked to people and been like, oh yeah, it's a really great movie. And then I have to like say like 10 scenes that I think are really stupid. And that's really annoying to me. And then my last one, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. And here's the thing. Is it a good film? No. Is it the only one of that entire series where I have had a glimmer of enjoyment? Yes. I was having a blast. Everyone is a little dumb. Everyone is, acting in a way that you're like, they know what movie they're in now. Rebecca Hall is having fun. You could tell she's like probably a little drunk sometimes. Like it just feels like it's like, oh, okay, we are in a big dumb action movie. And I think that that's really great because they've been so dour. Let Japan do the dour ones. Do dumb fun. And I know it's because they're scared. The 90s really fucked up movies to this day in a way that I think is really fascinating because Godzilla, the 1998 one, and then Batman and Robin, both of those, even though they're not terrible in the grand scheme. I love Batman and Robin. I think it's like really fun and campy. But like Godzilla's not great, but it's not the worst film ever made. But it is so campy. They're like treated as like these camp things that, and also 9/11, I guess. But like we like went dour and we're still doing dour. So that's very frustrating to me.
And I guess that just leaves me, your host as always, Carson Timar. I will say I tried to record this already, and I literally went into like a 30-minute ramble. So I'm going to try to not do that again. But it is challenging because to put ClapperCast into words and what this podcast has meant to me, it feels like an impossible task, and I don't want to overhype this for either you or myself. The podcast is not ending. Episode 200 is just a random number. I've not even been here for all 200 episodes. It bothers me immensely that I missed episode 1 of the podcast. Who knew it would turn into like my baby and I'd be the host and owner of the podcast? Not me. I didn't expect it. I almost didn't even show up for my first episode. You can go back and listen to like episode, I want to say it was like 3. It was 2 or 3. Defy Bloods. What was that terrible film? Artemis Fowl. That episode. King of Staten Island, I want to say. Early days of the pandemic. And I was so afraid of joining this podcast, of being on an episode. A little factoid, and nobody knows this. Literally not Jack. Nobody knows this little tidbit. That first episode I was on, I had to leave early. I said, hey, I have like 45 minutes or an hour. I can do my bit on Artemis Fowl, but like I have to bounce. Which in the middle of a global pandemic, not sure where everyone thought I was going, but I was like, hey, I have to go. I didn't have to go anywhere. I was so worried that I was going to go on bomb, embarrass myself, have such a bad experience that I was like giving myself an out. I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I'm going to try it out. If it goes great, wonderful. I'll join another episode. If it goes terrible, I'm gone. And obviously it went pretty well. And it's so funny. I want to do a little bit of just like a run through of the history of ClapperCast, because I think the only way for you to understand what this means to me is if I explain it bit by bit, because this podcast, it's weird also because it's like not been 200 episodes of this. And even this is a weird episode with Paul doing the best of 2024, best and worst of 2024, because the podcast really has had eras. And the first era was that during the pandemic, 2020. I want to say it was like mid-March? No, it was like mid-April 2020 to like December 2020. A wild time, obviously, in the world and in my personal life. This is when me, Jack, and Jakub pretty much were on every single episode, which, can I say, as someone who was still learning about being a critic, still learning about how to word my thoughts, how to analyze art, how to converse about art, what a terrifying duo to join every single week for a podcast about film. Holy shit. Both Jack and Jakub are brilliant people, are so well thought out and so well spoken, and are so strong about their opinions. And it was such a fun environment. I mean, it was super positive, super fun. Even like we had our little, disagreements, let's call them. Shout out Summerland. I don't think anyone even remembers that film, much less the debate between myself and Jakub on that film. But it was it should have been such an intimidating space. And because those people are just incredible, it was so warm and filled with support in a time when, honestly, I really needed it. Obviously, going through a global pandemic is hard for anyone. It's not a fun experience. It was in the middle of that pandemic that I moved out for the first time, specifically living on my own. So I lived with friends going into the pandemic, but then I moved to completely my own place in the middle of the pandemic. And it was a really bad experience. It was really bad, to the point where by the end of that series of that era of the podcast, we're talking like late 2020, early 2021, it was the only time in my life I ever went on depression medication, specifically because I was having the strongest suicidal thoughts of my life, which I don't say to and it was nothing to do with the podcast, obviously, God. To be very clear, podcast was like a joy. It was like something on my calendar I always could look forward to, and I needed it during that time, because it was the hardest time probably in my life. And I will always thank ClapperCast for having those conversations and just giving me a space for like every morning, 9 a.m. once a week. I could just go and have a blast and talk about film because I love film. But then the next year, everything changed. Not only did I just like greatly improve my life and things happening in my life, but I met Paul and Alina, and we enter era 2, the Paul and Alina era, which lasted from like February 2021 to what was it, like March 2023? We're talking like multiple years. And this is where the podcast really shifted from like this academic conversation on film to like almost a comedy show, it felt like at times, while still talking about film, obviously. I mean, I'll still go back and listen to some of our episodes because I think we were so funny, and maybe no one else thought we were funny. Who knows? But this is such a fun time where like I met truly two amazing friends that I'm so happy I'm friends with to this day. I still text Alina and Paul daily. I go hang out with Paul all the time. I've literally recorded episodes of this podcast, like the Kinds of Kindness episode. I don't know if any like eagle-eyed viewers noticed. I recorded that in Paul's house at the same like place he records episodes when he's on. Just so much fun I had throughout these years. And growing as a human, it was always just, again, a constant in my life that I had ClapperCast. And I had these two amazing people who are truly some of my best friends in my life. And that was born from the podcast. So I'm always so grateful for that. And I'm always so grateful also for like the fact that for anyone I was with at any era of the show, it's never been just about like, it's never been about clicks. You know what I mean? People talk about their podcasts and about like if they enjoy it or not, or if it's going well or not. And they'll bring up like the amount of viewers, which I find really odd. Because I get like, I guess like if you're trying to make money, fair enough. If you're running like a business, you need to have a certain amount of clicks, whatever. This has never been a business. It's never been about making money. It's always been about having authentic, fun conversations on film. And there's been times where ClapperCast got a ton of viewers. I mean, waking up to our Squid Game episode, getting 70,000 listens overnight is like definitely good day. And there's been times where it's gotten like no viewers. and everything in between. We fluctuate. And it's never been about chasing that. It's never been like, oh my God, we got to change everything so we can get as many clicks as possible. Okay, guys, we're covering Red Notice next week, or we're covering Heart of Stone, or we're covering any of these bad Netflix action films. It's always just been about having the conversation, which is why it's continued for years. 4 years is kind of crazy long for a podcast to be a thing. And it's because it was never about stuff that was artificial, that didn't matter. It was always about having fun and enjoying these conversations. And it's always just been genuinely such a great experience. But you know what they say, all good things come to an end. The Paul and Alina era ended over some mild drama surrounding Willem Dafoe's Inside, of all things. Again, like, friendship drama ended very quickly. But the podcast was clearly just not in the cards for our friendship, which is fine. So we entered this new era of the podcast, took a few months off, came back, really didn't have any direction. I set up like a really, I think, good schedule, to be honest, with all these random guests. And slowly but surely, Nick and Jack really stepped up and became the backbone of this podcast for this era that we are in. And every era means something like completely different. Every era has like a really unique place in my heart and has been rewarding for their own reasons. But God, if I loved what we've done with this podcast over the last few years. I don't know if I've ever felt this rewarded and this excited about like analyzing film and exploring film. It feels like almost like I'm a kid in the candy store. Like I remember being younger, and when you first get into film and you just see how large and how expansive film is, and it's so exciting. Yes, I am I am a little bit old enough to remember like going to Blockbuster and just being excited by the amount of films to explore. It feels like that. We're like, especially because we've brought in the older releases, we're not just tied to new releases. Now we do these older releases. It is so exciting to just jump around all these voices and all these perspectives and all these little crevices of what film provides, and have some really great conversations. You know, we'll go from like John Couture to like David Lynch to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes to Neil Blomkamp to fucking Terrence Malick to Avengers to Titanic, to Saltburn. You know, there's so many. It's so random at times, but in that you find such a rich conversation and tapestry of understandings of film. You know, there's so many episodes where I'll be conversing. We're recording these, spoiler alert, a little bit out of episode. Just recorded our Inland Empire review for Christmas, and there's a bit where I reference Schrader in it. Right, you make all these connections because film is connected and the human experience is connected, and it becomes just such a rich experience and conversation to have. And what I love about the people who join me every week, both Jack and Nick and also the guests, is that it is a really rewarding conversation, but it is also just still incredibly fun. Jack, like, I'll never forget, we're just turning our District 9 Patreon review. We did a full review. And then at the end, we just like started shitting and riffing on Neil Blomkamp for an hour, which was so funny. We made a bet for Gran Turismo is what it was called. There's so many fun moments like that where I'm just like, you know, it feels like I'm just meeting my friends at their house or at a bar or something, and we're just shooting the breeze on film for 2 hours every single week. And you know, some conversations are more focused than others. Some conversations are more serious than others. You know, I Saw the TV Glow is this really deep, meditative, beautiful episode that we created. Very different vibes than like our Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes review. But both just so incredibly worthy. And I'm so honored that they get to join me, and we still get all these beautiful guests, and Alina joins sometimes, Paul joins sometimes. It's just to put it into words is really difficult, because what's inside when I think about ClapperCast and I think about these people is just like purely immense joy. And that is something that is so hard to really put into words in a way that feels right and feels correct, because it's so strong within me. I just want to say thank you. You know, thank you to everyone who has joined me on this podcast. Shout out Rory, Ewan. You know, and actually, to circle back for Rory, I don't think people understand how important Rory was to this podcast. I feel like if it wasn't for Rory, we would not be on ClapperCast today. And shout out everyone who was on like that 8-hour London Film Festival episode. Shout out the God, and I love these guys. Shout out Nick and Jack for that atrocious Venice Film Festival episode. The audio is awful. They're smoking cigars. Literally a helicopter is like circling their building or their apartment or hotel or whatever. And it was like literally, I remember listening like, how the fuck am I going to salvage this? But that's like, when I think about that, I just get like immense joy and immense celebrate. Like I love that memory. I love Jack hosting the initial I wasn't gonna bring this up. Jack hosting the initial queer celebration episode that we did, the Pride special in 2020. It was me, Hillary, and Jack didn't know until very late on that he was going to host that episode. And I just remember him being very, because he doesn't identify as queer, him being very nervous about that and being very kind of out of his element in a way that I found really entertaining, to be honest. Paul and Alina, the Road to Halloween series, I still think is like so fun. I mean, we just had daily episode. Every episode of us was just like laughing at something and just like, again, truly just feels like a comedy show at points. And then now I just have so many warm memories. It also just like weird memories. When you think about ClapperCast and you think about history, all the weird memories start coming back. On our Patreon, Classic ClapperCast. Who remembers Classic ClapperCast on our Patreon? We did, I don't even know if this is available. I don't think it's available anywhere. But we did a ghost story review. And it was myself, Jack. No, sorry, not Jack. Jack would never do this. It was myself, Jakub, Nick. I think that's it. I still have the pictures. I should post the pictures on our Twitter to celebrate. We did a pie eating contest where we each got a full apple pie, because this is what obviously she does in the film. And we ate the apple pie in like 5 minutes. And it was like, and then we did this, to be clear, at the start of the review. Then we reviewed the film, and just like, it was so fun. And there's so many memories like that where I could just talk for an hour about all the great memories, and I'm just so honored and happy and pleased with what we've done. And I hope you at home have appreciated it in some form. I love that we've connected with so many of you through our email or through comments on YouTube or the podcast. Christian, the bandana guy, thank you as always for calling out Paul that one time. Randy, it's wild to think Randy, my first interactions with him is him emailing us about our episodes and talking to us about them during the Paul and Alina era. And then he now hosts the Uncut Gems podcast with Jakub. And he also was just like on our Lost Highway episode. That's awesome. And, shout out the entire network of Clapper podcasts, as I guess you would call them. Uncut Gems is so fun, incredible. They just celebrated 200 episodes. It's wild. They started like a year after us, and they've already like surpassed us in total episodes. That's dedication. Shout out Anatomy of an Adaptation, the newly reestablished and restarted podcast from Nicolo Grasso. I'm sure you've heard about listening to this podcast. He had Death by Adaptation and then switched the name so it was better with like, you can't say death apparently or you'll get flagged on YouTube. So Anatomy of an Adaptation, initial episode, myself and Nicolo Grasso covering Luca Guadagnino's Queer. Love that. So many great memories on both of those podcasts. Like, I still have my 50 Shades of Grey box set in my bookcase in my living room for Death by Adaptation. Uncut Gems, just like losing my mind at some of those early episodes. I just, again, I feel like I could keep talking, and I hope I am just like immensely just like filled with warmth as I discuss this, because I love these people and I love this podcast and I love everyone we've talked to and I love everyone who's listened. I love film, and I truly hope I love this. So here's to 200 more episodes. I'm so happy. I'm so happy. And this, dude, y'all, I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to promise anything, because like plans change. 2025 is going to be such a good year for this podcast. I get giddy because, like, obviously, again, it's so exciting that there's so many films to explore. And I look back at our last 2 years and I'm kind of like, okay, here's the list of filmmakers we've covered, and it's a great list. But then you look at the list of films or filmmakers we haven't covered who we're going to talk about, and there's some that we've talked about already that we're going to be revisiting. We're going to do First Reformed for my birthday. We're going to do maybe another Varda episode. Maybe we can do some teasers. There's a lot of filmmakers we haven't talked about that I'm so excited to talk about. And I just think the schedule, all I'm going to say is really good. In January, we have a double Lee Winnell feature. We're doing Invisible Man on the Patreon, and then we do The Wolf Man. We return, finally really getting into Eggers with Nosferatu. And then we end January with my first birthday episode, because I'm doing 2 birthday episodes this year. My first one is First Reformed. There's just so much good stuff, and I'm so excited. So with that, hey, we went from 30 minutes to 20 minutes of this segment, but I don't care. It's episode 200. And I love ClapperCast, and I love you. So thank you so much, everyone at home. Thank you, everyone who's joined me on this podcast. Let's get back to the episode. Well, let's end this with our favorite films of the year, the top of the top. I'm going to go through mine quickly because I've talked about most of them. Challengers, I loved. I Saw the TV Glow. Diddy. Ghostlight, which as a Romeo and Juliet fan, my gut says you would hate this film, but I think you should check it out. A really interesting take on the Romeo and Juliet narrative, in a sense.
Oh, interesting.
Queer, Last Showgirl, Hard Truths, Seed of the Sacred Fig, Gladiator 2, O Canada, shout out Paul Schrader, of course, and then finally Trap. Had so much fun with Trap. I'm obviously a big Shyamalan stan. Not that everything of his connects, Old is rough, but this one I found was really, really fun. And I think would play better on a rewatch. I think on a first watch, that third act can feel a little bit tedious. I think on a rewatch, a lot more fun with this one. Paul, what are your favorite films of the year?
So I've already basically talked about them. Anora, Memoir of a Snail, Conclave, Civil War. And then, you didn't count this one because you've seen it years ago, Hundreds of Beavers, which does not belong in any other category at all because we don't have Best Production Design, Best. I guess I could have put it in Best Director, but I specifically saved it from that because it's just so, it's a marvel. I spent fucking $100 to buy, they released a Blu-ray version that comes in wood. And I was like, oh, fuck yes. So I was like, I got that. I am so impressed by them, and I want them to do so much more. I just need them to do the next couple steps very carefully, because I can see them either falling into obscurity or doing something terrible quick. Just figure out your shit, do it, because I do think that they have a real future in filmmaking. Another one though, actually, I would put it same asterisk as Deadpool. Stop doing so many shit jokes. There were so many, and that's the only part of that movie that I was like, okay, I guess. But all the animal death is super funny in a way that I am not used to. Speaking of animal death, shout out to both Wild Robot and Flow. Unfortunately, them being the exact same fucking movie is going to hurt both of them. I think we'll still have Wild Robot win, but I think that it hurts Flow a lot more. Yeah, those were really fun. But my issue with Wild Robot and why it's not on any of these lists is the death got excessive. I just got sad after a while, existentially, oh. And not in a way that, I was talking to my friend Chris about this. If I was a kid, I don't think I could have gotten through that movie. And I think that's bad. It's the same shit that Pixar's doing, where it's are these for children anymore? And if not, what are we doing here? You don't call them a kid's movie then, and then make them a little more mature if you want. If you're doing these themes that are too much for a child, then anyway. Sure. But yeah, I also really loved Wild Robot and Flow. Yeah, it was, overall it was a fine year. And then we're talking about 2025, right?
Yeah, I'll just quickly say I really enjoyed Hundreds of Beavers.
Oh yeah.
Super, super fun. And I appreciate that, like, it got recognized. It feels like it's one of those tiny films that should have just been lost in the shuffle, but like everyone is including that film and still talking about it, which I appreciate. But yeah, overall in 2024, we kind of expressed it like a pretty mid-year. I think when we look back at like this decade, very few things from 2024 are gonna pop up. But I will say is I feel like the award season, because this film this year has just been so kind of shallow, I've been able to engage so much more because I feel like some of the best films of the year are actually the ones in award season compared to like the last 3 to 4 years where the top 10 have been like, oh god, I hate all these films and there's nothing I feel passionate about. Yes, I'm not that big on like Wicked, or I'm not that big on A Real Pain, Amelia Perez specifically, but like I like Conclave a lot. I love Conclave. I'm okay with Brutalist. I like Anor. Like there are films where I think are good and have quality, and I'm excited that like it does feel like this award season is something that I've been able to engage with more this year. And maybe it's because I do not consume any award season coverage. I've blocked every single person who talks about it, so like maybe I'm just completely ignoring the conversation, and that's why I enjoy it, because I'm in my bubble. But it feels to me like that is one of the good things this year, is that I've been able to care about that conversation. But overall, some good stuff in here, but definitely not a lot that I would say is like overly memorable.
Yeah, I fully agree. It's I think we're gonna be bored by the time the Oscars roll around, like in a very visceral way. Like even Conclave is a movie that, like, the fact that it's in talks for Best Picture is just wild to me.
For sure. Well, let's jump to 2025, how we always end these episodes, talking about some of our most anticipated films of the year. Paul, I will let you go first.
Cool.
What 2025 releases are you really looking forward to?
So I didn't do the like blockbustery movies because like I started making my list and I was like, I'm excited for Jurassic World. I'm excited for Superman. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, of course I'm excited. I'm excited for Thunderbolts. Like, yeah, I like movies that are.
Are you excited for those films? I like the list. I'm like dreading every single one of those. Is that valid?
You will never, ever get me to not be excited about a Jurassic Park film. It's not happening. Ever.
It's been so bad, and Gareth Edwards sucks.
They are valid. Bad. I will be there day one. Superman, I'm more excited for because I think it could be great, and you know, my boy Nick, like it could be. You know, I have issues with James Gunn, but yeah, that's I still think it could be fun. My biggest concern right now is that it's going to be a fucking group movie again, and I'm getting the vibes that it might be. If you don't know this, real quick, listener, every single James Gunn movie is about a ragtag group of people with a self-insert running the team. Every single one. Every single one. Every movie. Every movie. Go look. Not one is not that. And it's crazy. But I'd always like kind of cared about it. But now I'm watching Creature Commandos, where he literally cast himself and his wife, not like their voices, but it's him and his wife just on the screen as the main characters. And you're like, no, we're not putting up with this. Also, he's in the opening credits. Like, he like does this thing where he like leans back. Fuck off, James Gunn. You're not that cool. Okay, anyway.
Well, what movies are you excited for then?
Well, that's what I was saying. I'm excited for Superman. And Thunderbolts, I like feel like could be the surprise one. In the same way that like I like Agatha because it doesn't really matter. It's like one of those. Okay, Dogman, the animated movie. I really feel like that trailer is funny. It's like legitimately funny. And I think it could be like the big surprise of the year that people are like, oh, that was actually fantastic. One that I'm putting excited with a huge asterisk is The Friend, which is the Naomi Watts movie about her friend dying and her inheriting his older dog. I do believe it could go one way or the other, where it is one of my all-time favorite movies, greatest film of the year, or it could be absolute trash. This is real rude. The fact that it's Naomi Watts is concerning because she has really bad taste. But the book is supposed to be fantastic. I've been really wanting to read it, and I know the story, and I think it could be really great. A book I have read, Clown in a Cornfield. It is so bad and so stupid, and I think the movie is going to be so fun. I think we will just have a blast. Basically, all it is a murderous clown shows up, a bunch of them, and start killing a bunch of kids. And then there's all this extra nonsense plot. It is so stupid. I had a great time. Both it and the sequel are both really fun. In ones that potentially could be Oscar-y, Roof Man, which is Derek Cianfrance's new movie with Channing Tatum, which is about a man who broke into McDonald's through a roof and then camped out on a Toys R Us roof. It just feels like something that's going to be really fun and dumb, or could be really good and Oscar-y. I can't tell, but I love Cianfrance, kind of. Blue Valentine is one of my all-time favorite movies, and then since then I haven't loved anything of his, but I do that where I still care about a director and think they'll do great someday. And then a random one is Companion. I just found out about that today. It's one of Zach Krieger's, I think instead of him directing, it's one of his friends. He's bringing someone up. That seems cool. It seems like it could be fun. I didn't love his Airbnb movie, but I did have fun with it, so that's worth it. I do not even remember what it's called. Another one with a bad title.
Barbarian.
Okay, so 2 special shout outs for things that I'm not excited about. I just went from putting it on this list to removing it and being livid that Anna Kendrick is not in The Accountant 2. What do you mean she's not in The Accountant? What do you mean? What do you mean? The whole movie was the 2 of them. She's the best part of that movie. Their whole relationship. And it's finding out that he replaced her with Matt Damon, which Gladiator Doctor, is a little okay, whatever. So yeah, I'll probably watch it, but I just have zero interest now because I found him to be annoying, but bouncing off her is really a fun dynamic. And then my dishonorable mention is there are 2 Scott Derrickson movies coming out next year. And I'm sorry, what do you mean? You're going to look me in the eye and say that one of the worst directors alive is doing 2 films? One is a sequel to a movie where the man died at the end, and it's a sequel. It's not a prequel. The fucking kids are in it again. And then, so it's going to be a ghost story. I don't need more ghost stories.
Specifically a sequel to a terrible film, let's also mention. But
literally. And I know some people like it. You're wrong. And then the other one is called The Gorge or something. And it's about 2 assassins, and it's got Miles Teller in it. And they're pointing at each other across Listen, I cheered when the man's house burned down. I have never hated a director more. He is so annoying. He is so cocky. Everything about him is just and he's getting 2 movies? No. And also, I hate that he got fired for being terrible. And for some reason we are oh, we got to ride or die for that man. No, you don't. You do not need to care about a career of someone who's bad at what he does. It's wrong. I'm looking real quick to see if I've ever liked one of his movies. I don't think so.
I cannot imagine you have.
Oh, Sinister was all right, but that's a horrendous list.
Okay,
also-
so I won't mark you down for the Gorge review. That's chill. That's chill.
You're like, I also love the idea that you're doing an episode on the Gorge.
Yeah, we're not doing an episode on either of those films.
Oh.
Peace and love, everybody. See, I didn't really have that inspired of picks for my best of 2025. Normally, we just kind of like look at that first page of Letterboxd and pick something off of it. So that was really the vibe I brought. I have two films I'm really, really excited for. Obviously, Saw 11. I will be there. I'm super pumped for it. And then also Avatar, Fire and Ash. Of course, I'm excited for. Like, I love Avatar.
I love that I didn't watch the second one, and it feels like Dobby is free. Like, I'm like, I don't need to. Like, those movies are so interesting. I'm surprised you like them because they disappear out of the cultural conversation instantly. Boom, gone. Like, I didn't see it. Everyone was like, okay. No, like, you have to see it, Paul. The amount of times I hear you have to see it for movies I don't. Furiosa for weeks. Oh my God, you have to see Furiosa. I don't want to. I don't like Mad Max. I don't care. Fury Road was fine. I don't need to watch a prequel about the least interesting character. Anyway.
I'll also shout out Kokonada's A Big, Bold, Beautiful Journey. I like both of his previous films, and I'm happy because he makes a film like once every decade. So I'm excited that we're getting another Kokonada film. With that, Paul, I think that's going to do it for our recap of 2024. What a year. I'm sure it's going to be just like that before we're back next year to talk about 2025. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for everyone who's joined me both on the podcast and at home watching the podcast for 200 episodes. It's been a wild ride and we are going to keep going. So we'll see you for episode 300 eventually. Paul, where can people find you on social media that you don't really use, but still?
You know what? I did post a picture on Instagram for the first time in years.
Whoa.
It was funny. I wiped my entire Instagram and I was like, I'm going to start posting. I posted once, so now I look more insane than if I had just like left it.
And what was the post?
It was me at the Eras tour. Yeah.
I thought you cleared it all just to really promote the Taylor Swift of it all, which was like valid.
I will say that thank God for the Eras tour because that new photo that I have like is probably my favorite of all my photos. It's just fun. It like doesn't look like anything. You don't know it's like referential, and it's just like I just like it. Every time I see it, I'm like, that's a good photo.
I think it's the first photo where you've looked like happy. So that's definitely good. Like you just genuinely seem happy, and it was like, whoa, like Paul really can be not depressed. Yeah. So excellent.
Well, I don't like when I smile because the cheeks go up. So I'm like, I really tried. It was a genuine smile, but a posed smile. And then, so a Price Like Tag on Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Yeah, that's it.
You can find me on Blue Sky and Letterboxd, just Carson Timar. With that said, that's going to end it for episode 200 of ClapperCast. Woo! Thank you so much for joining us at home. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, everyone who sent in an audio note that we played throughout this. I appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.